Hi everyone, welcome to Write Bike Repeat's Highlights Reel. I have a very special guest today. I'm sure you will recognise him, or many of you will recognise him. It's Benji Naesen. Hi Benji.
Hello.
Thank you for coming and joining me. We've been trying to arrange this for some time now, have we not?
And yes, certainly, for a few weeks.
Yes, exactly. So we sort of seem to have incompatible schedules, but we figured it out now. We figured it out. So apologies in advance also for my voice. I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm sounding a little bit husky. So hopefully I won't burst into coughing fits every 5 minutes. So we'll see how we go. Benji can take it away if I start like spluttering and stuff. Anyway, so let's talk about you. So in case anybody has been living under a rock or doesn't follow cycling Twitter or any of your other projects, tell us a little bit about you and your connection to cycling and your social media presence and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. So I'm Benji, if you hadn't noticed. Basically, I do multiple things in cycling these days, kind of accidentally, because it started as a hobby and now it's accidentally going into something that I can do as a job in the future, which is great. So basically in the past I was a kid, and when I was a kid I started gaming a lot. And when I was gaming I was playing this game called Pro Cycling Manager, where I learned about cycling, learned every single rider's type of rider and so forth, and got into that very in-depthly. And as a consequence I knew quite a bit about the riders there, and I started making YouTube videos about that game, in the sense that I try to get a story going. I try to get a smaller team and make them as big as possible in that game, and people tend to enjoy that, it seems, which is very great to have support on a series like that. And I ended up having contact with this Australian guy, which is known as Lanterne Rouge on YouTube, and along the Twitter sphere as well these days. And we ended up, after half an hour of conversation, say to each other, well, he told me, ever thought about doing a podcast in cycling? And I was like, quite a few times actually, because when you're doing lots of stuff with cycling, you're like, how can I use that? And how can I do more stuff with that? And we ended up starting a cycling podcast, and we're now a year and 4 months in. I think August last year, end of September last year was when we started. And I guess I can say we're very fortunate that it has grown to the size that it has. And I'm very much enjoying everything that goes around with it, because the YouTube channel with the cycling game stuff, the podcast ongoing, and me being able to talk shit on Twitter all day is also pretty cool. So in the end, it's a very enjoyable journey, and I'm fortunate to have met so many nice people along the way, like yourself. And yeah, it's a fun journey. So that's what's going on in my life at the moment.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal. It's come around. I guess I seem to I joined Twitter in November last year, I think. So like, I think it was just after the Tour de France, and I was like processing my trauma at Roglic having lost in the way he did. And I was just like, I can't process this alone. I need to find a community, because I don't really know any cycling fans in my own life. So that's how I found Twitter. But it does seem as though all the people that I've met and kind of chatted with, like yourself and other podcasters and other content creators, that there was a big explosion through lockdown, maybe, of people going, actually, I think this is something that I could do. And it's resulted in like just a brilliant array of different kind of media, and Twitter becoming, I don't know, it might have been really big before I got there, but it seems
I don't know either.
Yeah,
I honestly started at a similar moment, because like, I think if I look at my stats of my Twitter account, I think if I would look, then I would probably have 1,500 followers a year ago, which it's now like 13 times more, which is insane, the growth. And like not only my account, but the people that I'm around and talk to, how they have been able to have a wonderful journey the last year as well on Twitter. And it's less about the following, but the amount of people that you can convene with, and the community that it creates. And I feel like it's a very nice community to be in. Sometimes there's a bit of a toxic fighting going on, but I guess that's in every single situation on social media, so I can handle that at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the thing about cycling. Twitter seems to be the best of Twitter in a way, because
we're biased.
We are. It's true, but you hear about toxicity and you know, people on Twitter and stuff, and it does seem to be kept to a bit of a minimum, I think, in cycling. People just want to chat cycling, and I think that's it's been a revelation really for me as well to find that community just kind of there and evolving all the time, which is really cool. So in terms of actually enjoying cycling from your own perspective, you obviously got into it through the gaming and stuff, but can you pinpoint a time when you kind of moved from, yes, I'm enjoying doing the game, to watching a race and thinking, actually, I want to get into this sport as well, like as a fan?
So basically, I started the game in 2006. I was basically 10 years old back then. So yeah, it's a while ago, 15 years ago. And I think it took around 5 years for me to also move fully into the sport aspect, as 2010 and 2011 was where I started watching the Grand Tours and the monuments and the most important classics, because in Belgium, I think every Flemish race is the most important cycling race in the world, and except for OxyClean.
Oh,
Did you that? But I think over 2014 was perhaps the moment where I started getting into it completely, where I started watching the smaller races like Tour de la Gueglia or all the smaller races, just in general. And I think that grew along the years, and that's partially because of that game as well, where I started making this database for the game so that people didn't have to buy the next year's version by putting all the riders and transfers in the older game. And as a consequence, I had to like rate all these riders and say, oh, this guy is so good in mountains, this guy is so good in hills. And you get to know all these races and you're like, I'm going to watch this next year. And in 2015, 2016, I started watching more and more. And let's say that I think I watched less actually in 2021 than in 2020 and 2019, because with the podcast, you focus a lot on World Tour. And we only cover World Tour men's and women's cycling. We talk sometimes about Pro Tour races or smaller races, but it's kept to a minimum. And as a consequence, I think I watched less of the small races the last year and a half, which on one end is kind of sad because I do end up liking those races, but in the end, I can't watch every race in the world. It would have been pretty tough to do so. So
there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, certainly. So I can't really complain with how it's been. And I think it's not that there was one moment where I switched to, oh, I'm going to watch it full time.
Mm-hmm.
No. It's like a gradual upping of races, adding to my own calendar. And yeah, obviously the most important races are the most fun to watch sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think it's been the same.
That's.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think it's partially because of the community around it. Because with the small races, you can talk with 5 people about who's doing good in the Tour de Limousin, and I can talk about with 100 people or 1,000 people on Twitter about what's going on in the stage in the Tour de France. And the community is what makes cycling more enjoyable to watch for me.
Yeah, definitely. That's true, I think. And I had a similar kind of growth in terms of race. Obviously, I mean, I started watching the Tour de France in 2012. That was kind of most British people you'll find kind of at that moment when we were like, oh, cycling, okay, that's the thing that we're good at. And it kind of stemmed from there. But then, you add in the Grand Tours and then start adding in one-day racing and stuff. And then it's only been this last year or two, and I've just been like, oh, yeah, let's find out about all these other random races. And it's been a revelation, actually. So your development was kind of organic with the knowledge, and then kind of linking that knowledge to the actual real product on the road and kind of seeing how they... I'm not a gamer, so I have to confess I don't really understand how it all works, but I know that it's really well, it's really well linked. Like, it's not a complete fantasy, it's based on reality. Were there riders that kind of spoke to you early on, like, or was it just all of it, all the racing?
I think in 2011, that period, 2009 to 2011, Kid Evans was one of the riders I enjoyed watching a lot, because he was always kind of the underdog in races. Also, with the Tour de France that he won, he was not the favorite at the start. He had some wonderful racing going on. That I think there was a Montalcino stage in the Giro at some point where he was doing very well. I can't remember at all if he won that or if he was second or something. But I remember something vague where there was a Muddy Evans crossing the line at a certain point, and I loved that race. Yeah. And I think by the time he won the Tour, that's kind of my thing with favorite riders. When they're outsiders, I love them. When they start winning, I'm like, okay, it's kind of getting boring now. So with Evans, it got to a point where he won the Tour de France, and I'm like, what now? I don't really have anything to aim for anymore. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna try and find a different candidate. And I enjoyed Nibali because in the bigger races like the Tour and so forth, he hadn't been able to push through to the top step at any point. And he did so in the Vuelta and the Giro already, I think, at that point. Or I kind of liked him along the way, but that's where I like this guy a lot, because the descending is something I appreciate a lot. The skill in descending, and I appreciate that with a lot of riders. Every rider that can descend a lot, I love watching descending clips. I would love to see a drone clip of Mohoric going down a 20-kilometer descent, the entire descent. I would watch that for a complete day if necessary.
Wow.
Just love that. And
the race organizers about that then. Get something organized.
Yeah. But then again, it's kind of dangerous if a drone ends up falling on his head in the descent. It's probably a bit dangerous. But yeah, Vincenzo Nibali was the one that was next then, guy that I ended up loving to see him ride, because he's kind of rider that attacks a lot without thinking. And as a consequence, he often gets countered and completely flops as a consequence. But when it does succeed, I'm pretty hyped about it. And the Milano Sanremo win, the Lombardia wins, love those races. And that Giro win in 2016, the one where in the middle of the Giro, Kruijswijk was in pink, and then Kruijswijk crashed on some climb. I always forget the name of that climb. And towards the end of the race, all in clutch, it all came together, and he took the pink jersey. That was a wonderful Grand Tour to watch, because it's fun until the end. And the day he won the Tour de France, it started slowing down a bit for me in 2014 as well already. And then 2016 was a day where I'm like, okay, he's not a favorite anymore. He's now an outsider again. I can support him again. And I think it slowed down the last years a bit, mainly because he's not at his top step anymore. It's not that I only support him in good days, but it's because he has to ride proper races if I want to actually support him, because I need to see him on TV to support him. But yeah, seeing him win Sicilia this year is pretty fun as well. And then accidentally, at the end of 2019, I think, the Vuelta where Pogacar came third, we had this Discord community, this community that I'm in, PCM World it's called, so it's Pro Cycling Manager community, well, we had a bit of a prediction game competition where we had to predict what was going to happen in the Vuelta, and the winner gets credits, eternal credit. And we went into that, and I ended up putting Aramburu in on like 3 stages on the second spot or something, and he ended up getting a second spot somewhere and got close on another one. And then the meme of Aramburu being my favorite rider kind of started. And it's not because I enjoyed seeing him ride. It was just a bit of a joke, as like he's got a name that is quite funny to say every single time I feel personally. And I ended up playing with him in the game on my YouTube channel, and I ended up tweeting about him in a memed way. And then he actually started becoming a good rider. That was not really expected.
Not what you had planned.
Yeah, exactly. And then it kind of blew up when he won a stage in the Zulia, and then the second place in the Vuelta and so forth. It's been pretty hyped, but I think the peak Aramburu hype has already happened, and it's kind of now in the period where I'm like, I need to find someone else, and I don't know who. And I think it might be time to look for a favorite rider in female cycling or something, because there's a lot of cyclists that I love watching there, and as a consequence, I think I will probably choose one there, or one in each. I don't know, but I just need someone to support now, and I don't have anyone, so it's kind of sad.
Oh, right. Pro cyclists apply here. Benji needs a new favourite. Aramburu is past. Totally funny. Yeah, I did wonder actually. I was going to ask you about the Aramburu connection, and now I know. So that's good. It's good to know. Yeah, I totally agree. You need someone to root for. And also, I'm totally I'm of the underdog as well. I love supporting. I get what you meant about Nibali, like kind of you need them to be at their best, but still an underdog. Like when they start to tail off, it's maybe you don't derive the same pleasure from it. But yeah,
an example is Greg van Avermaet when he was still getting second every time. I was supporting the guy when he started winning that entire year. I don't know which year it was. I was like, okay, this is over for me, and now it's kind of over. Yeah,
and then he was over, and it was just a bit like, oh, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
Cool, Greg. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm on the same page, definitely. So for obviously for the gaming and obviously for Lanterne Rouge as well, you're analysing races a lot. You talk about tactics, and you're very deeply kind of connected with the. You're quite separate, I guess, objectively speaking. Do you have moments and races where you're watching and you kind of get emotionally attached again? Like, can you kind of take away that separation and just get really overexcited about it again?
Yeah, certainly. I think I'm pretty hyped about many things in cycling, and I can separate it a bit where I can support for riders but still judge them fairly. For example, I already said it. Nibali has been my favorite rider for a while, but if I have to talk about his chances in future Grand Tours and so forth, I'm gonna be honest, it's not happening. And just all that stuff, being able to judge your favorite rider fairly is also part of supporting them, because I feel like the best supporters or in cycling, the best fans are the ones that are able to spot the weaknesses in the riders that they support and acknowledge those. And I try and do that with the riders I enjoy a lot. And I've got the same with Aramburu this year. I was never expecting him to put up a decent climbing performance throughout the year, and we didn't see one. So that's also an example of that. But I think one objectivity issue I do have is that I've got recency bias. As in, I end up, when thinking about my favorite races, if something happens today and there's a wonderful race today, that might be my favorite race of the year tonight. But after a few months, I might be like, okay, maybe I spoke too soon, and perhaps that race 3 months earlier was more fun. Yeah. But you're in the hype of that one race, and I'm like, okay. And as a consequence, I've got the same thing when I watch TV shows and so forth. I'm like, I just watched a wonderful TV show. It might be the best I've ever watched. And then I rewatch one part of an old series, and I'm like, okay, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. And I think it's come up a bit when I've been doing shows with other people and chatting about the year in general. And you do need that distance, I think. Like, it's almost like I feel like we should do this again in 6 months and just say, did we make the right decisions at the time? Because you are remembering, Paris-Roubaix and Worlds and so on.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing to sort of look back to the beginning of the season and remember how awesome some of the early season racing was, especially some of the like week-long stage racing and so on. So anyway, that segues nicely into the actual categories. So with that in mind, thinking about the year and acknowledging your recency bias, so I'm now expecting to say something that happened just recently. I will add as a caveat, normally I ask people to send me their choices a few days in advance, so I have time to process. Not that I've sort of forgotten what's happened, but it's just nice to know. But with Benji, I haven't had sight of his choices until just now. So
I'm sorry about that.
No,
that's my fault.
I quite like it because do you know what? I'm going to segue back into a story about something that happened yesterday because it made me laugh. I felt like I found my kind of level of nerdiness or geekery or whatever you like. I'm writing a piece about week-long stage races from this season, and I was researching by going back through GCN clips and finding things to remember how they went and stuff. And I went to a stage of the Tour de Suisse, turned it on. I said, isn't this the stage when Chavez rides up a driveway? And literally 2 seconds later, there it happened. I was just like, yeah, that's it. That's my year. Literally memorized every cycling race. It's very sad. So with that in mind, I want to know first your biggest cheer moment. So your the moment that had you jumping up and down, or however you choose to express your excitement more than any other. What moment were you just totally stoked about this year?
I think one of the moments, I probably have a few, but the one I thought about directly when I saw the category was in the Giro. We had stage 4 Sistola, I think, where we had Dombrowski winning ahead of De Marchi and a few others, including Attila Valter, and he ended up being on 1 minute in GC that day. And a few days later, he was ending up in the Maglia Rosa ahead of Remco Evenepoel at the end of one of the mountain stages. And the fun part about that is that I saw him dropping back, and I was like, oh, is he going to take it? Is he not going to take it at Maglia Rosa? And he ended up taking it, and the Belgian TV was all saying, Remco Evenepoel is in pink. Oh, yeah. But no, he wasn't. Attila Valter was. And me, as a person that is often seen as one that is not very patriotic towards Belgium, I don't know where that comes from, that idea, but I was celebrating Attila Valter getting pink. And the reason for that is I spoke to this guy a lot last off season because we ended up playing the same video game a lot. Cyberpunk, for the people that end up watching this. And yeah, we spoke about that a lot, and we got into talking about cycling a bit. And he's become a rider that I enjoy a lot as well. And that was kind of the moment where I'm like, okay, this guy's doing it. This guy's doing it. And I was super hyped for him because I consider him a guy that I really appreciate in the sport. He's a nice person and a very down-to-earth rider, which I appreciate as well. And it's someone that, looking at the days after he got the Maglia Rosa, really loved wearing it and also honored the jersey in a way. And I think that moment was one of my most hyped moments of the year, where I was like, oh my God, this happened, because I had been hyping up Valter the entire first week of the Giro on the podcast because, yeah, I like the rider, and it was fun to see it come true, and mainly because he's a nice person, and I'm happy for him. And that's the moment where I'm like, oh, I love that. And I think that happens a lot when underdogs take a Maglia Rosa in a race and a yellow jersey and a red jersey in the Vuelta, and then end up, doing better than expected and hyping up an entire country, because Valter is one of the riders from Hungary and Hungary. And it's not like they have 100 riders ready to pop into World Tour. They've got Blanca Voss in women's cycling. They've got Attila Valter and Dina and Vetter in men's cycling. And that's kind of it at the moment. Beak perhaps as well, but it's not like they've got 100. And it's cool to see an entire nation just hyped up about a rider like that. And yeah, that's part of it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I love this choice. And also you completely went against the recency bias, not only in the year, but also in the Giro, because obviously, like things that happen in the first week of Grand Tours, you notoriously kind of forget what happened by week 3. So I love that you've chosen this, and it's really cool also because nobody's chosen this before, so it's nice to be able to chat about it. He was ace. I loved watching his defense of the jersey. I really agree with what you say about underdogs defending the jersey and really showing them. So it's like old Christian Eiking at the Vuelta this year. That was a similar sort of story, and he ended up holding on to it for ages. But yeah, Valter, just did seem lovely.
Yeah, I think another example in the past, one that is very extreme in that sense, was the day Veuclair took yellow in one of the Tour de France and held it for a long time. I don't know what year it was, but it was in the past, and just I think everybody was kind of supporting him because he was always in the breakaway, always an attacking rider. Always an enthusiastic rider, and a lot of people supported him. And I think that's also the kind of event that people get hyped about. And this felt similar, but in a smaller form. And I like Valter more than Veuclair. Sorry, Veuclair fans. I'm indifferent about him.
Yeah, no, Valter does seem like a really nice guy. And it's not that everybody's nice and stuff. There's, cyclists in general seem to be decent people, but he just was so enthusiastic and effusive about having the jersey. And as you say, that small nation representation is it's so important for those riders and for the people, and engaging the people from that country as well in the sport. Obviously Slovenia sort of had that
certainly
a few years back, and now look where they are, and Slovenian fans are absolutely brilliant. And in fact, it was in the Giro when we saw the Slovenian fans on that stage when it went out of Italy into Slovenia and back again. And obviously there were no fans in Italy because of the rules, but in Slovenia the rules weren't. So it kind of just was through Slovenia, and you just saw that passion for cycling, and it felt even more real and huge because of how the contrast between the fact there weren't any fans in Italy, because of COVID. But yeah, really good choice.
I think one of the aspects with Slovenia as well is that the Giro seems to be kind of capitalizing on that aspect, because obviously they start in Hungary now, which is pretty hyped for Valter and so forth. So that's a nation that is growing its cycling culture as a consequence of a rider doing good in a race. And then you gave the perfect example with Slovenia. They went through Slovenia last year. They're going through it again in 2022 with, I think, the Kolovar climb in one of these stages. So in Slovenia. So they're trying to, I don't know, perhaps attract Pogačar to ride the Giro. I think Veni, the organizer, is speaking about that quite a few times. I don't expect Pogačar to ride the Giro this year, but wouldn't surprise me if he does it in one of the coming years. But there's always the question of what is he going to do? Is he going to ride the Giro and not the Tour de France and the Vuelta? Because with UAE as a team, I don't expect them to easily say, you won't ride the Tour, mate. And the Giro
Yeah.
Tour double is much harder than Tour Vuelta, for example, or Giro Vuelta. So I don't know what they're gonna do.
I don't know either. It's interesting to speculate. I feel like maybe he might maybe get 3 in the bag potentially if this year goes well, and then try and do the double and sort of elevate it. Because I don't think, as you say, I don't think UAE at any point going to say don't do the Tour, because in terms of money, it's the most lucrative and in terms of exposure as well. But yeah, it is interesting to see. But I think that's a brilliant thing about like it engaging nations, and it's great that it's going to Hungary. And it'll be nice to see him. I assume he's going to ride it again this year. It would be crazy if he didn't, right? See what he did this year, and hopefully, like, they've obviously tailored the stages to hopefully suit him. And yeah, it'll be nice to see him do well. And he's still an up and coming rider. He's very young still, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be good to see. Good choice, very good choice. So with that, we have to move sadly towards the negative side of 2021 and find out what your shed a tear moment is. So the thing that you found the most sad or disappointing in the cycling season. So what did you choose for this?
I think one of the things that I would dare to say is that the stage 3 of the Tour de France is one of them, and it's kind of a complete thing in the sense that it had a dangerous final, and you had many crashes. Jack Haig crashing out, Ewan crashing out in the sprint, Roglic crashing out a bit earlier. So all that combined made me just not hyped about the Tour de France that evening. I was salty after that stage. Me and LR were just before the recording of the podcast, and we were sitting there like, this was not a fun stage at all. I did not enjoy this at all. And I think we as fans want to see the best compete with the best. And as a consequence, if something like that happens and you lose Roglic, one of the 2 favorites of the Grand Tour, you lose Ewan, the best sprinter in the world in my eyes when it comes to performance. And you lose Haig, a rider that is up and coming, and he's a nice guy, and he has an opportunity to go for GC in the Tour de France for one of the first times for him. All that stuff combined is just not that fun. And a lot of riders are injured then for a week or so in the Tour de France, causing teams to be not as powerful as they are supposed to be. You've got Jumbo, who basically had 3 full form riders at that point in the race, which is crazy. You had UAE, who despite the crashes of Hirschi, I think, McNulty at a certain point, a few other of their riders, still ended up doing relatively decent as a team during that Grand Tour. But all those things combined is just not that fun for the rest of the race. And I think it takes away a bit from the race. Yes, the first week of the Tour might as well be a stage race on its own, because it was amazing to watch, but that one stage was not that fun. And another example is, I don't know which stage it was actually. I think stage 2. Was it stage 1? Stage 2, I think. The crash with the fan with Tony Martin, with Opiomi sign. I always forget which stage it is.
I think it was 1.
But
it was the first stage.
Yeah. So that's also an annoying aspect of it, like just losing competitors when the race isn't even started yet, really.
Yeah, it was really like, it was just, I remember going on Twitter that evening and kind of just sharing the kind of disbelief at what had happened. And you're absolutely right. It soured everything. It was just, I wanted to sort of say, I don't want to watch anymore. Like, I don't like it anymore. Can I get off now? It was just, it was for all different reasons. Obviously personal reasons for the individual riders, from a competitive, standing back and looking at it objectively, the competition was effectively over at that point. I mean, we didn't know for sure, but you could tell Roglic wasn't, he was pretty good. I was actually worried about Jack Haig's life, like genuinely, like, because they didn't go back to him, and he wasn't, and when they did, he wasn't moving, and I was just like, you just, you suddenly remember how dangerous the sport is when things like that happen. And it was a real, after sort of, you had the Aliomi situation, which affected a fair few riders. It was a weird first week of the Tour. Like, there were some amazing moments and also some real hard ones to bear. And you could feel like, I think the tension was just, I don't know, it just felt, you could feel the kind of unreal levels of pressure, I think, maybe more so than ever. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think there's also the aspect of Van der Poel being a part of that. And I think I love Van der Poel, as in like every race he races is just more fun than if he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think he did a lot for that first week of a Grand Tour. And I'm curious what's to come when he rides the full one. But I kind of agree on the aspect that there's some stage where they're like, oh, this could have been more fun. And it's also because we make content about these stages and we're like, okay, we know this episode is going to get watched a lot because a lot of people crashed. And I would rather have the episode get watched a lot because you've got an awesome race, you know? So that's also like, we know it won't hurt our content that people are crashing, but it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's not what you want. Yeah, it's not what you want to talk about either, is it? You know, like as I say, you want to focus on the positive stuff. There was so much promise for that tour, you know. And as you say, if it wasn't for Mathieu van der Poel, I don't think that. I think it would have been a really bad Tour de France, like overall. I would have gone away from it. No, I didn't like that. I enjoyed Cavendish, obviously, and but the GC race was effectively over after like stage 8 or 9, whichever one it was, and then you know, then it was just some good stages. But yeah, it was a weird one. Yeah.
How viral did Cavendish go that Grand Tour? As in, like, obviously the year before he wasn't at the level to even finish in the peloton at certain races, but in that Tour de France, since the Tour of Turkey, he started growing towards a form where he can actually compete in the Tour de France. We had the hashtag CAF to the Tour movement on Twitter that accidentally ended up working.
Yeah. We've talked about that on the show before. In fact, I think at least 2 different people have referenced that. You started that hashtag, and then it's sort of like cycling gods, just, you know, fate intervened. And
but it's sad for Bennett, but I think like when you're in Britain, then when you go to the bakery or some sort, do you think that those people knew that was happening in the Tour de France, that Cavendish was winning stages?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, it didn't go to that level.
I know. I think it was definitely made the news, like the BBC, which is kind of, you know, it was something, at least it was something, but it hasn't taken off, or it's, I guess, died down since 2012. It's sort of steadily started back down, but it did reinvigorate things a little bit. And when the Tour of Britain came around, the crowds were out in force. Like, it was good to see. So I think there is still that element there, but CAF wasn't on form.
Do you think that one of the reasons that it died down a bit since 2012 is that Ineos is now focusing on non-British riders as leaders?
It's hard to say. I think because there was a few years there with Froome, but I don't feel as though the British people, cycling fans in general, connected with Froome on the same level as they did with people like Cav and Wiggins and stuff. And obviously it did get quite repetitive. So however much you're pleased for a rider, if they're, you know, of your nationality, if that's what the reason you support riders, then even then it was getting a little repetitive and a little kind of dull. I want to say it, you know, like, I mean, it's the splash screen and all that stuff. I think Ineos still have plenty of support over here, and also investing a lot in young British riders at the moment that we've seen coming through, and also diversifying with their kind of, you know, looking more at the one-day races and stuff, which I think they'll be really good at next season, more so even than this season.
Yeah, they seem to be diversifying into like different disciplines as well, with riders who do well at track, riders who do well at cycross. We've got the Ben Turner kid. I'm calling him a kid. I'm like 24 myself.
He's older than Tom Pidcock, I think.
Okay. Oops. So it looks like Ineos is just more interested in more disciplines to support. I think Cameron Worth in their team also does triathlon. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. Right, or an Ironman. One of those things.
Yeah, I think so.
So it seems like they're diversifying, and I guess that's fun. But when we're looking at just road cycling, you want to see them win Grand Tours, and I'm not sure about the Tour.
No. I think that we saw them not knowing what their plan was in Grand Tours last season. And I think throwing lots of leaders at everything didn't work, obviously. I mean, it worked at the Giro, but it was different at the Giro because they were united behind Bernal. And then that approach didn't work in the Tour. But I think, it will be really interesting. They do. I am more interested in them now. I'm like, where are they going to kind of go next? And yeah, it's good to see the diversity. I like it. We're going to move on to your one memory from the year. So if you could kind of summarize 2021 cycling season or anything about 2021 that's going to stay with you, what would that be and why?
I think I've got like two things in that. First of all, I've got that one stage in Tirreno, Castelfidardo, with Van der Poel attacking with like, was it 50k to go? And then Pogacar dropping Van Aert with 20k to go, still closing down the majority of the gap. You see Pogacar closing him down towards the end of the stage. And in the last kilometer, you see literally Pogacar behind Van der Poel as he is crossing the line, completely done for. That's one of the best races I've seen in my life. And I love that. I absolutely love that stage. And that's one of the cycling memories I've got. So I'll let you talk about that for a bit first before I go to my second one.
You can tell I'm like bursting to talk about it. Yeah, I think like I've literally just written about it because I'm doing a bit about week-long stages, as I said, and stage races even. And yeah, I mean, it's classic Mathieu van der Poel. Just he said he was cold, and so off he went. 50k to go, gels down, like, you know, he was eating for like pretty much the first half of that attack, I think. And I've got a picture. I've just taken a still of he's riding along, and everyone on the side of the road's got like fur-lined hoods on and stuff, because it was absolutely grim that day. It was like I'm seeing like Van Aert's chin shaking because he was so cold, and it was insane. And just seeing Pogacar closing in on him, and yeah, I mean, what a race that was. And he paid for that. Yeah. He really paid for it. Like,
yeah, certainly. And just that entire Tirreno was amazing. I think Pogacar's performance and Van Aert's performance in that Tirreno was just very strong as well. Looking at Pogacar winning on Prati di Tivo, pretty damn strong performance on Prati di Tivo. One of his better performances that entire week of the entire year, if you combine those three stages, really. And then we look at Van Aert, and everybody's talking about Wout van Aert on Ventoux. You as well. You love Wout van Aert. If I look at some stuff you post on Twitter.
And
I think that people underrate a lot the Tirreno climb he did, Prati di Tivo, because he rode that climb completely alone. And people say, oh, he didn't finish with Pogacar on the climb. Mate, Pogacar is the best climber in the world right now. Like, sure, of course he's not going to finish with Pogacar, but he paced alone the entire climb because everybody was sitting in his wheel. And that's obvious, because if you're a competitor and you see that someone is wearing the leader's jersey and you can't go much faster than him, why would I pace if I know that this person is going to try and defend his jersey as much as possible? And obviously, Wout van Aert had to pace in the entire climb. If he had support in that race, better support, riders that work for him on Prati di Tivo, I'm saying that he's getting much closer, if not on the brink of winning that stage race. I don't actually know the time that was at the end, so I might be wrong on that, but at least he would have been closer in GC in that race. And I think that Jumbo kind of was testing the waters with Wout van Aert in GC there, and I think it's something that we spoke about on the podcast before, that moment like 3 months before, where we were like, I wish they should try him out on Tirreno and so forth, and to actually see it happen on Prati di Tivo and see him do that so well, I was super hyped, because I think if he didn't have that appendicitis surgery just before the Tour de France, we would have seen a way better Wout van Aert in the first week. And I would have been really surprised if he wouldn't have been closer to yellow in the first week of the Tour de France as a consequence, because on stage 1, for example, I think he would have done much better if he didn't have that surgery. But yeah, that's stuff that happens. It's something that you can't really do anything about. And I was way more hyped about that stage than, for example, the Ventoux stage, where I felt like the second he attacked from the group and he was going to the group of Alaphilippe, a rider who is good in shorter climbs, but when it comes to longer climbs and breakaways, he ends up being not as good as usual days. And I was like, Wout van Aert's winning the stage. And it ended up happening, which felt like a pretty obvious thing in that stage. And I was less hyped because it kind of felt like it was happening already from the moment he won in the break. And like Mollema, it's an awesome rider, but I believe Wout van Aert is a better climber than Mollema. I hope that's not a hot take in this world.
Well, it's an interesting take, I think, because, you know, Mollema is obviously known for his climbing, especially long kind of grindy kind of climbs. But yeah, Van Aert's, his climbing is coming along like a lot, because he's obviously known as a puncher, and the short punchy climbs is his bread and butter. But those longer climbs seem to be, if he could, I mean, you're right. The thing about Tirreno, which is, it was like a foreshadowing of what he did at the Tour, because he won the first stage in a sprint against Caleb Ewan. So, sorry, Cav, arguably a better, a better win in terms of sprint wins. He won the time trial as well, and I think that was the third stage, maybe. I'm not sure. And as you say, had a brilliant climb. So we didn't win that stage, so it's not exactly the same, but it was the same set of kind of achievements, I guess. So it's interesting. I don't know. Can you do it over 3 weeks in the really big mountains? I think
last year's Tour de France parkour was the more perfect one for him to have such a chance to try something like that. And I think that surgery the month before ruined that possibility, because he didn't enter the Tour de France in a form big enough to even try that. And I think it's an interesting concept to think, what if Van Aert was closer in GC after a week because he didn't have that surgery? Would they have tested both Vingegaard and him? And perhaps it would have been a bad thing for Jonas if they also went for Wout van Aert and ended up failing with both. So you don't know what could have happened, but I think 3 weeks is difficult for Wout van Aert, and I don't see it happening unless the parkour is really, really perfect and they currently have better options. As simple as that. Vingegaard is a time trialist as well, next to being a good climber, and he's still young. He can grow. He has proven it now 2 Grand Tours where he had a really decent form, Vuelta and this Tour. And I'm incredibly curious what he will show in the future, because the next Grand Tour that he does is only the second one that he will do as GC co-leader, and stuff can still go wrong, but seems like a nice guy. I support him, I guess.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jonas. He's coming through really nicely, and obviously he wouldn't have got the chance that he got if it had been for, it was Roglic versus Pogacar that we wanted to see, but he did such an amazing job. Like, imagine if they'd been supporting him from day one. It's interesting to look at. But yeah, I think he's got a great future ahead of him. It's an interesting dynamic, I guess, with Jumbo at the moment. They've got riders who are all quite suited to the Tour de France parkour, maybe more so, and less for the Giro. And obviously Roglic owns the Vuelta, but I don't think he'll defend again if he has a good tour. If
he wins the Tour, he's not riding the Vuelta, I think. Even though, on the other end, I think him winning another Tour de France might make him solo record holder, but I'm not sure about that one, which is something that might be worth trying. But then again, if you win the Tour, who cares?
Yeah, well, exactly. I don't think if he wins the Tour, I don't think that's going to happen, is it? I think you had another one for this category, for your memories from the year. Is that right?
Yeah, just a tiny one, in the sense that the all-encompassing memory will be how my journey has been this last year, and the podcast and everything I do in cycling right now. It's something that I enjoy a lot, and it's memory I'll keep, because a lot of people support me in what I do, and I do very much appreciate every single one of that. And as a consequence, I will try and remember that as much as possible.
Yeah, so 2021 is the year when you kind of you've made that decision to go from doing it for fun and to doing it as your actual career, which is an incredible step to take.
Yeah, it's actually I think I made a decision this year after thinking about it a lot, because you got to be sure that I can financially survive if I make this decision, because obviously that's a realistic aspect of it, but also the fact that, is it something I want to do? Because I loved my job previously as a web and app developer, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do stuff for my own hours, because I started feeling at my normal work that I'm like, I could spend these hours making cycling content for my own. And I was like, okay, I need to make this decision, and it's worth trying, I guess, because I have a less risk in my situation at this moment to try it now than in the future, perhaps when I have a house to pay off or something like that. So that's not the case now. So that's the good aspect of it. And I think 2nd of January is when the full time starts. So directly in 2022, perfect. So let's hope 2022 is the year.
Well, I think I speak for many when I say that we're all looking forward to seeing what content you come out with, and
thank you,
and how it kind of grows. So yeah, it'd be really cool to see. I missed a category, or I'm doing them in the wrong order, just to keep you on your toes. Surprise. What was your biggest surprise of the year?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be really boring on this one. It was actually also kind of that Tirreno MVDP win. So we've spoken about it quite a bit already. So we can basically skip the category at this point. But I'm not sure it was a super surprise, but it was something that I will keep in my mind for a while. That's how I see that, at least.
Yeah, I suppose from the perspective of Mathieu van der Poel, nothing's surprising when it comes to him, because that's what defines him, is his unpredictability. However, it doesn't stop you being surprised when he does things, because, you know, from the Strade Bianchi finish to taking the yellow jersey on a little jaunt in the breakaway at Tour de Suisse before, you know, just jumping off the race because he doesn't want to do the mountains. He just does things his own way, and it will always be cool to watch, for sure. So the next category is Unsung Hero. So this could be anything from like a domestique that doesn't get the recognition they deserve, or a sort of underdog who's achieved above what you would expect, or something else, like I think someone else chose, Belinda chose the mechanics, which is a great choice as well. So what have you gone for Unsung Hero?
Okay, let me take a look at my list right now, because I forgot what my answer was going to be for this one. So give me 1 second. Was it the Unsung Hero or
Unsung Hero, yeah.
Okay. Arashiro, he's a bottle man. He always gets the bottles for Bahrain, and I think I was really surprised with his performance in Vuelta. He also rode a good Giro, actually. It's a rider that is unsung in the sense that he can ride a full Grand Tour in support and has no issues with that, and definitely does very well. I feel like the Clerc gets quite a bit of credit for what he does. He's obviously one of the better domestiques in the world, but riders like Arashiro do it more behind the scenes, or more at the back of the peloton, and therefore not really doing that much on screen. And I feel this year we saw a glimpse of Arashiro on screen as well, with a moment where he was taking bottles and then flew past the peloton up a climb. So the man can climb really well for a supportive rider. And next to that, also in the Vuelta, Caruso was fighting for that KOM jersey and always ended up missing the break. And Arashiro was the rider that offered himself up to try and close down gaps, or close down the gap between the peloton with Caruso and the breakaway, or make it shorter so that Caruso can try and jump to that breakaway. Yeah, Caruso failed in jumping to that breakaway, but Arashiro did a great job at doing all that work, and that was awesome to see. So I love that. As simple as that.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like you're right when you say, like, people like de Klerk, and, you know, formerly Tony Martin, and the sort of the peloton, the drivers of the peloton, that they're very visible because they're at the front all the time, and so they kind of get the credit for doing that work. Whereas the ones running backwards and forwards with bottles and all that other, you know, musettes and stuff, you don't see them. They aren't visible. It's that visibility, isn't it? Like, not every team member, unless you're a particular supporter of that team, gets that time on screen, gets their name mentioned in the commentary, and they're just invisible, really. So it's when you see them kind of rise above and or suddenly appear and doing cool stuff like that, it's really good to see.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely. It's very cool. Yeah, and all the domestiques that kind of stand out. My favorite domestique moment of the year was Danny Martinez in the Giro, you know, managing Bernal up after him. But he's not invisible. He's there at the front doing the work a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think next to Martinez in that race, I think a lot of people remember Martinez a lot because of that picture and so forth, where he was trying to hype up Bernal or make him perform better on Sigariala when he dropped. Yeah. But I think one of the riders in Ineos that is a bit undervalued for the public sometimes is Castroviejo, because he doesn't have that kind of picture, that marketing image that is hyping up his domestique work. But the man rode the Giro, the Tour afterwards. Perhaps Martinez would have done the same if he didn't have was it COVID, or I don't know what he had, but he was not riding after the Giro for a long time.
Yeah, no, you're right. He did loads of work, didn't he?
Yeah, certainly. And he's also very versatile. And I think in the Tour de France, he was one of the 6 riders on one of the final mountain stages still in the group with Pogacar, Vingegaard, and so forth. So that means you've got a pretty solid level.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a very really reliable, and another one who deserves a mention for sure. So that brings us to our final category, which is one for the road. So this could be something else that we haven't mentioned that didn't fit into one of the other categories that you want to remember from the year, or something you're looking forward to maybe in 2022. There's lots of.
I think there's quite a few things. I always look forward in 2022 towards what youngsters will do in the future. I'm really hyped about youngsters all the time. And I'm sometimes biased towards youngsters where I'm like, oh, this guy's 20. He's going to win this race, even though he's got like no chance of winning this race. But I want to see him win this race because he's a youngster, and I want to see the older guard proven wrong and so forth. And that's an aspect I like. And that's, for example, a Johannesson, a Yuzo, Hater, for example, all these youngsters across the board. We've got many neo pros next year that I'm looking forward to, and that's something I love watching and love seeing him grow. And I think that's part of both me following cycling, but also the aspect of me making cycling gaming videos where I try to build youngsters into bigger climbers and so forth at a smaller team. And that's what we did this year on the channel, and I think that's what I'll do next year as well. And usually that ends up being with riders like an Yuzo and a Hater and so forth in the team. So that's, I think, what hypes it up a lot as well. So that's my first of the answers on this one, together with Roglic and Pogacar, hopefully fighting each other in the Tour without crashes, please. The cobble race can be fun, but I don't want it to decide GC because of a crash or something. It can decide a lot in GC if Pogacar, for example, goes haywire and takes 5 minutes doing something completely crazy. It would be great for the day, but the other 2 weeks might be boring as a consequence. So rather not.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Any more?
And I look forward to a lot of next year. I also want to do some personal stuff. I want to lose weight next year. I want to try and use the time that I spend on work right now, real work, not podcast work, and not YouTube content work. I want to spend half of that on just being a healthier person by exercising more and trying to do my first goal next year and so forth. So I've got some personal goals I want to do, and I'm looking forward to challenging that as well. So it's just an entire a long list of things I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, it's like a sort of a new start for you in many ways. I guess. Yeah, definitely. And obviously, the racing. That's my main hope for 2022 is the Roglic versus Pogacar at the Tour, the race we were meant to see this year. The race that we did see. I mean, 2020 was a weird one because obviously it was sort of it didn't even. I don't know. It didn't sort of fully register that it was about those two specifically until right at the very end. So we need to see a full, the full story, the full saga from beginning to end. And young riders is a great choice. I mean, it's this particular era of cycling for the young riders they're training differently. They're kind of coming through earlier, and there's mad super talents coming through. And just seeing how they kind of are transforming cycling is amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you've got. I feel like you kind of are seeing with the gaming and stuff. You're seeing the things about them, stats and all that stuff, maybe a little earlier than the rest of us who are waiting to see them in races. So you've got that sort of inside track, maybe.
So little inside story there is that on my current channel, my own YouTube channel, I've got a series where I started with Aolo, that Pro Continental team with Fortunato in the team and so forth. And I'm now in 2024 in the series, and riders have grown a lot. For example, Alessandro Covi has become world champion. In the meanwhile, we're now riding the Tour de France with Ayuso as leader. So it's grown a lot, and you see the youngsters being at the top level in that game then, because in 2024 it kind of predicts the future. But it does that based on what we know now, because a lot of people spend their free time on trying to get as accurate stats as possible for those riders, and as a consequence that's really fun.
Right. So you're kind of extrapolating like potentially what could happen down the line.
The game is.
Yeah,
I'm not really.
But it's interesting to think that
Yeah.
you know, it might be interesting to, I'm sure that you will have this in hand anyway, but to line up what does happen in reality with what the game suggested might happen based on what we know, as you say, that's really fascinating. And yeah, there's some amazing young riders coming through in all different areas from different countries. And so Kofi is another one who looks really sprightly. He's always at the front, like looking lively.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to see. And we've got obviously Valverde's final year in cycling to look forward to.
Is it?
Apparently.
I feel like he's had a lot of final years.
They did a video with sad music. It must be real.
Yeah. I'm going to try and predict this here. I think give it 5 years, he's back in the sport riding for a Conti team somewhere in the same shape that Davide Rebellin is still riding his bike.
Yeah.
So
I could see that.
That's really I could see that happening. It would be fun. But on the other end, I think he'd probably enjoy a bit of a break as well at certain points.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Movistar need to be released from his influence, I think, to a point.
Yeah.
You know, it's they've got lots of good riders who I think a lot of the time it seems to be sort of Valverde's way, if you like. And yeah. So yeah, loads to look forward to in 2022 on all sorts of different levels, personal, the wider world of cycling, media, social media content, and all that stuff we've got to look forward to from you. So that is really exciting. Yeah, I can't wait to get. I just can't wait for the year to start again. Really, I don't like it when it's no cycling. So your sad face in like avatar is like, yeah, I totally get that. I just feel sad all the time. So yeah, not that we're counting or anything, but I haven't looked at I've got a day count on my website to Omloop, but we do have UAE before that. I think we might even have this Tour of Rwanda might even be before that as well.
San Juan in January, come on.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think end of January, San Juan. And I think we've got Viviani announced for that race. I think Ghana, Evenepoel. So it should have decent riders.
Yeah, of course, because I keep forgetting, because 2021 has been such a full season.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that a lot of the races were still not in the right place in the calendar because of the beginning of the year. We were still on COVID time, as it were. So yeah,
and I think it's more in the evening then that we should be watching that race instead of noon, because it's in Argentina, of course.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Oh, excellent. So we do have some stuff to look forward to a little sooner than Omloop. Yeah. But anyway, it's going to be really good. So thanks so much for your time today. It's been really fun chatting.
Thank you for the invitation.
No problem. And we'll do it again sometime, I'm sure, when I come up with whatever my next thing's going to be. I don't know what it will be, but we'll see. Take care, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Yes.